I would argue it's of fundamental importance. I'm here as an ambassador for my tenure leading the embassy, and it's for us to represent the government and to manage the intergovernmental relations. But in doing that, the role of organisations like the British Council, other institutions like the British School at Athens on the archaeological and research side, but also a whole range of institutions such as universities, both British and Greek and so on, play a fundamental role in the breadth of a relationship that is about much more than just government to government. And it's about people to people, it's about reflecting a shared history over more than 200 years since the start of the struggle for independence, but of course way back beyond that as well when you consider Greece's influence on Western civilization and so on. So I think it is of crucial importance, and it's something which we devote a lot of effort to promoting with the British Council, with civil society actors here, and with their counterparts in the Greek system. This was a really good initiative that came at the request of the UNHCR, but where the British Hellenic Chamber of Commerce and their members were enthusiastic in responding. It's actually about the more human and forward-looking element of when you have refugees who have been given asylum status and are settling in a country, how you can integrate them to the benefit of the society that they're making their home. And in a nutshell, what the UNHCR are doing, and they've used Greece, I think, as a bit of a pilot for this, is to set up online a system whereby refugees who've got legal status, who have brought with them, wherever they've come from, certain skills and talents and experience, but who, for reasons of not knowing the society or having left everything behind as they've fled persecution, have not been able to connect with those organisations or institutions that can use those skills. And it was really encouraging because we didn't know what response we would get. As in many ways, I think, where you have an initiative like this, and credit to the UNHCR in Greece for doing it, it's always a little bit uncertain what the reaction will be, but it was really positive. And I think if we can play a small part in supporting organisations like that to help with the proper integration of refugees who are trying to establish themselves, then that's to all of our benefits. Let me start with energy, and with Melina, I think one of Greece's leading companies, largest businesses, with a genuinely impressive offer and engagement both in Greece and elsewhere in the UK, where they're already a well-established investor, contributing significantly to major UK energy infrastructure development between Scotland and North East England. They've had a range of projects, and where they are, through Mr. Mytilineos and his senior team, in the process of applying for listing on the London Stock Exchange, which from my point of view is fantastic because it's a sign of confidence and optimism in the relationship between our two countries, as well as the London Stock Exchange and the UK. All of the discussion that we're seeing, whether it's electrical interconnectors, pipelines, or particularly for UK expertise, where we're able to support Greece's push to develop more renewable energy sources. So we've got big companies like Lightsource BP, Next Energy, Whatcrop, SSE Renewables, who are already playing a part in developing photovoltaic parks, developing hydrogen technology and so on. And there's a lot of interest for Scotland, where the UK, and particularly offshore in Scotland, has been developing very successfully offshore wind. So there's a number of areas there, and the energy side, I think, is clearly a key focus for us all, and I'm keen to see what we can do to encourage even more connection in that direction. And there are other areas. You mentioned defence and innovation. We're looking later this year to hold an event in Cambridge which will focus on tech and particularly medtech, an important research and innovation cluster for the UK there, but where there are a number of Greek figures already heavily engaged. So that's one example. And on the defence innovation side, we had Defence Minister Dendias in London at the end of February. He saw his counterpart, our Minister for Defence Procurement, and others, and they had a really constructive conversation about how the United Kingdom, with our defence capability, with our tech infrastructure and system, can work with Greek partners to help the Greek government pursue its own agenda in terms of expanding defence innovation capability and production here in Greece. Actually, the broad picture continues to be enormously positive. I've just seen in the last few days the latest figures from INSETE, whatever that has given arrivals. And not only was the UK the largest market, the first market for foreign visitors to Greece last year, but those numbers, now some people came on multiple occasions, but we had 5.3 million arrivals. That's remarkable in terms of, and Greece has a population of what, 10.5 million? For the UK, okay, we're 67, but for 5 million arrivals into Greece. And the really fantastic thing about this, and I know this as somebody who's living here and so on, is that whether they're going to the Greek islands, whether they're going up to northern Greece, the Peloponnese, the Ionian, wherever they go, the vast majority of those 5+ million people come, have a fantastic time, they receive a really warm welcome, and at the end they go back, rested and looking forward to their holiday next year. And we're delighted that even if the numbers aren't quite the same, that the UK, London, Edinburgh, Manchester, the southwest, wherever it may be, continues to welcome good numbers of Greek visitors each year. So the tourism flow in both directions are really important to us. We're conscious of how important it is for the Greek economy and pleased that we're able to play a part in that. What I would say is that we're aware of discussions between the Greek government and the trustees of the British Museum. When Prime Minister Mitsotakis was in London at the end of last year, I understand that the two Prime Ministers did touch on the issue. The British government's position remains that this is an issue first and foremost for the museum and for the trustees. But also, I think, importantly, since the government took office in July last year, from the Prime Minister downwards, they've been clear that if the museum and the Greek authorities are able to reach some sort of agreement that doesn't cross any legal red lines or whatever, then the government will not stand in their way. So I think I take some encouragement from that. I think it's really important that we understand, as those of us who live here do, how emotive and important an issue this is for Greeks, not just in Greece, but across the world. It's also, I think, important that we recognise that there are certain legal arrangements in place in the United Kingdom that we need to be aware of, and that there's a wider conversation, which I have had cause to be involved in a bit when I was ambassador to UNESCO before, about the global question of restitution of cultural heritage and so on. So much though, and I understand why, people might want to say, well, look, this is a specific case and can we not just sort it out? I think being conscious of the wider context is something we need to do. But let's see, and I'm hopeful that between the museum and the Greek government it will be possible to find some sort of arrangement. The first thing I'd say is the UK has been, as I know Greece and the Greek government has been, absolutely robust in our support for Ukraine since the first day of Russia's illegal invasion. It's also really important that we maintain Western unity. I think the key point for us is that the new US administration, President Trump, have made clear that they want to work for a peace. They have already had a number of rounds of talks with both the Ukrainians and with the Russians. And we support those efforts to try and identify the basis for a peace. But it has to be a peace that is lasting and sustainable. And it has to be a peace that does not leave open vulnerability or whatever for Russia to repeat this, or come back to the fight, if you like. But Western unity and maintaining Western unity is absolutely fundamental in that. And that is why Prime Minister Starmer went to the White House when he did in early March. President Macron from France had been there a few days before. The Prime Minister and the French President are working incredibly closely together. Essentially, the idea of the coalition of the willing is to recognise that the fundamental basis of our Western and NATO alliance security is not actually being questioned. What we have had is a clear signal from the new US administration that as European powers we need to be taking on greater responsibility. I think for Greece the circumstances are a bit different because Greece, for local reasons, has been investing more in defence for many years. That's why the British government has signalled an accelerated plan to increase defence expenditure, and we're seeing that across both European NATO allies and European Union member states who may not be NATO allies. So I'd argue there are 2 points really. There is the immediate imperative and requirement for support for Ukraine, reassuring the US administration that we're doing our bit and that we're prepared to do more. And that's about finance, but it's also about this coalition of the willing and so on. And then there's the second phase, which is where I think all credit to the European Union member states, a determined and urgent effort to put in place the funding, the structures to accelerate European defence industrial capacity, where the United Kingdom not only wants to, but feels strongly that we have a lot to offer and a part to play, and we're keen to do that. In this issue, I think London and Athens have actually been in remarkably similar positions since those outrageous, horrific terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. We've been absolutely clear in our condemnation of terrorism, of Hamas's actions, and the right of Israel to defend itself and tackle that terrorism. What we now need is an urgent ceasefire. We need to see the complete return of hostages. So the first phase of the agreement that was reached and the return of hostages, I think we all welcomed. We need to see urgent action to address a devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, which is not in anybody's interest, quite apart from being, just deeply distressing, and it's not. And we also need to engage in the difficult challenge of having the prospect of a sustainable solution that allows the Palestinian people and Israel to live in peace and security. Now, that is a two-state solution, but I don't think getting too hung up on labels and what people may or may not read into them in this instance is necessarily particularly helpful. The key point is we support Israel's right to defend herself. We condemn terrorist acts, but there will need to be a solution that allows Israel to continue without the continual shadow of terrorist violence, but allows the Palestinian people to have their own state. And that presents some big issues for Israel and for the international community about stopping the expansion of illegal settlements, recognising the Palestinian people's right to have their own state, supporting those Palestinian political leadership, the Palestinian Authority, who reject violence, but who are looking to establish a peaceful solution for their population. So this is a long-running issue of enormous complexity, and there's been much too much suffering on all sides over recent months. But I think an early ceasefire, provision of urgent humanitarian assistance, the return of the hostages, and getting back onto some sort of political track for a sustainable solution should be what's guiding us at the moment.